What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. We have the balance patch preview. Finally, I know a lot of people have been waiting to figure out what they want to grab with their headhunt, who to grab with their ML, for their ML5 of choice and all that. So let's go ahead and see here what Smilegate ended up buffing. I haven't looked at anything just yet, but it does say here 7 heroes and 2 artifacts, which does seem pretty light, at least compared to the last balance patch. I'll give them a little leeway, but I did have a meeting with Smilegate a couple months back, and they did say that they were going to try to do much bigger balance patches like the previous one that a lot of people, myself included, really enjoyed how much, jam-packed hero buffs were in there. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and check this out, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, we got... So for the 5-star Moonlights, we have Pirate Captain Flan, which I was definitely hoping for and also expecting, right? You have the new, which... Is it Sea Witch Pirate Captain Flan skin, which I think looks amazing. And then after, the previous fiasco where the kind of community, some of the community outcry got her to not get those changes going through. Let's see what they went ahead and addressed here. We have Closer Charles, who definitely needed some love. I think his kit is still decent, but definitely he's been kind of outshined by a lot of other aggressive units, openers, things like that. And then Archdemon's Shadow is one that I know very well that I really love. I like this unit a lot. I can't wait to see what they do with her. But just like the other units that we discuss, she's been definitely power crept. If you want Seal, there's so many other units that Seal much better. She kind of lost her place where in previous seasons she could either be a hyper carry, a Seal monster, debuff. She could do a lot of stuff on her own. But yeah, she also kind of lost her identity with other units sort of taking the spotlight. In terms of regular 5-stars, we have Eligos, which is interesting. We have Blue Chloe, right? Okay. And Yufine, who somehow Yufine is always on here. And yeah, no Luna. Instead, we get Yufine. Sinful Angelica could be interesting too. This one is, a lot of times people are worried when they have 4-stars on here. Look at auxiliary lots. Sometimes they change, Smilegate changes things up to try to make them more useful, but will also impact, the niche cases that we're already using for. And if you guys weren't aware, I'm sure some of y'all know this, Sinful Angelica, at least in previous Guild Wars seasons, a little less now, but it's still very, very strong in fighting certain comps, like particularly the Genuas with their openers, like Sea Phantom, things like that. She works really well in baiting things out. You bring her in 2 ice units, blah, blah, blah. Very nice in Guild Wars. I use her all the time. Let's see what they change. Hopefully they didn't affect that, but if they did, hey, if it makes her better overall, I'm okay with it. In terms of artifacts, Sigurd's Scythe. If this gets a straight buff, I'm very, very interested. I still use this, but I could see it getting a little bit, less meta as time progresses, especially with other artifacts kind of competing with it. Look at artifacts like Golden Rose that don't necessarily... Sigurd's Scythe is a lot more incentivized for your unit to have some attack on there. And then an offer you can't refuse. Guys, you might need to tell me in the comments. I'll look it up after. I don't actually know what artifact this is. I guess we'll find out later when we get to that part. All right, let's go ahead and get through this. We have Pirate Captain Flan, who is going to have a buff steal. And by the way, I think after this as well, I'm going to look up what they actually had previously. In the previous iteration of her buffs before they got canceled, just to see what they ended up keeping and changing. But instead of 75% chance, we have a guaranteed steal. So very, very cool. 100% chance, essentially. And then Scourge of the Seas, the only other thing they're changing here. So they... let's see here. Is there anything? No, that's it. Okay, so Scourge of the Sea. Previously redirected 30% of damage suffered by the caster, the foremost ally. Similar like Seaside Bologna. After using Execution when the caster is a buff, activates Hunt, which was that combat readiness thing. That could also, guys, remember this was a non-attack skill, so this could proc units like Celine. But let's see here. When attack decreases damage suffered by 30%, so that's really cool. So instead of having it redirected to the front unit, now she just straight up has a 30% damage reduction. When more than one damage reduction effect is granted, only the strongest effect is applied. Yep. After an ally attacks, if the target does not have a buff, activates Hunt. Okay, so guys, this is definitely way, way less impactful than her previous buffs. And to be honest, I think that previous iteration of the things they were gonna implement were actually crazy. I don't fully recall 100%, but I remember there was so much more to it. Wasn't it like team-wide buff stealing? And anyways, a lot of that got cut out. This is definitely a straight buff in terms of just damage mitigation. This is huge because you're just gonna take overall less damage. Same damage you'll take on Flan because it's 30% reduced, but instead of that 30% going to your frontmost unit, it's just negated. Additionally now, let's see. Additionally now it's after an ally attacks, which I believe counts herself. as long as they don't have a buff, instead of you having a buff, as long as the target does not have a buff, you can activate Hunt, which is a little interesting, and they also increase it by 1 turn. So if you're fighting a unit or a team comp that has a lot of buffs, this is not going to proc, but we do have buff stealing, so that's kind of nice. And then additionally, I guess if you have units that strip, which most people do now, we can make that happen. But overall, I actually think this is pretty light. I don't know if this is going to make her... I like the previous changes a lot more, obviously. They were way more impactful, way more meta-defining. This is obviously straight up like a net positive in terms of what she gets, but it's a little bit sour to me because of what we saw previously in the changes. What else? Let me see if I'm missing anything here with her explanation. Yeah, so now it's when anyone uses it, but it's also... when the target doesn't have a buff instead of the caster having a buff, which I guess is probably more reliable than having your team have a buff. So, okay, we'll see. Overall, I think this will proc more often because it's not just Flan. So I think that is actually, yeah, quick math, napkin math, that should be more procs of Hunt. Okay. Closer Charles, let's see what he's getting here. I see a lot of green here. So Demolition from Elimination is going to be having a little bit of health gain. I call this Leech sometimes, but it's not technically Leech, it's a Life Absorb. So that's kind of nice, I guess. He does have like evasion and things like that, so this could be pretty impactful. Him helping like avoid chip damage, and additionally, we're gonna have some just damage dealt increased overall on the demolition part. Okay, and then closer after, if the enemy's health is less than 30%, after the start of the first battle, increases evasion. Oh, interesting. Let me see here. Start of the first battle increases evasion. What was it before? Where did he get the evasion before? Was it on, either way, now he's going to have on closer, at the start of the first battle, we get invasion for 1 turn, and after an ally, except for the caster attacks, if the enemy's health is less than 40, increases combat radius. So we get that reduction, after an ally, except for the caster attacks. Yeah, it went from 30 to 40, so the threshold is a little bit, better. We'll increase our combat radius and get that perception buff. Okay. Very, very light buffs as well, but more damage is pretty nice. And they're explaining here that the evasion at the start is good just in case he gets outsped, which is always a possibility, right? But most typically with Closer Charles, we're kind of trying to lock him in and we're going to be the aggressor. But yeah, I guess that is kind of nice just in case. But I will tell you, if you're playing a very aggressive comp with Closer Charles and your opponent has the opener, sometimes evasion or not, they're going to be pushing you back. They're going to be pushing their team up. It could still be a bad idea when you're running comps like Closer Charles. But yeah, overall a buff. But in terms of these two together, guys, just the first two, this is very light. And then combined with only 7 heroes total, this is super, super safe. I'm not a big fan so far. All right, Archdemon's Shadow. Hopefully this one is very significant. Touch of Chaos. All right, I like this already, guys. So instead of the Soul Burn, this is huge. Instead of the Soul Burn having to increase this to 100% and ignore ER, now this will still ignore ER, but the base when we don't Soul Burn is 100% chance. So very, very strong. That RNG was always just so obnoxious. And this will free us up to do, you know, either use souls elsewhere, or if we just want to get that ignore ER later on. But that first turn, usually, typically, we don't have the souls ready. Unless we're bringing like Taga Health. So that's super, super huge in my opinion. Twisted Power. Let's see here, which is the S2 passive, I believe. Yeah. After using Touch of Chaos, before it was a 40% chance to activate Burst. Now, after using a basic skill, when the target is sealed, increase attack of the caster for 1 turn before activating Burst. Let me just read the wording because it's a little bit changed up here. So previously, it was an 80% chance, right? There was still a chance you miss, but it was very high if the target is sealed. And now, after using a basic skill when the target is sealed, increase attack of the caster for 1 turn before activating Burst. Successful attack deals additional damage proportional to the caster. Oh, so we're actually going to increase... so they take out the blind, which I'm not super happy with, because this is actually... Guys, even though 60%, the blind was huge. It was very, very powerful. Blind is one of the strongest debuffs you could have. However, before... Let's see here. Did they change? So 25% is still the same. 1 focus is still the same. But I guess now we will scale off attack. So we're going to be very incentivized to build attack. And honestly, I was trying a high attack build only instead of going like crit damage. And I like that anyway. So yeah, I think the play moving forward, excuse me. And especially this is nice with things like Fairy Tale for Nightmare too. We can just stack attack and survivability, maybe some effectiveness, and then just forego crit and crit damage. And that way we get even more like another scaling multiplier based off our attack. The blind sucks to be missing, and I have to double check. I'm assuming they're saying if you seal, you will auto activate burst instead of there be a 20% chance. I'm curious though if we can still activate burst if, let's say, the target is immune and we can't land seal, or if they 15% us, right, and we don't use ignore ER, because there's still a chance of 50%. And we don't seal, can we still activate a burst at a 40% chance? I'm assuming no. Or does this mean we always burst anyways? I think it is the seal, right? We'll read the description, and if that's not there, guys, let me know in the comments what y'all think about that in terms of which one works. But Dissolution, the S3, now we have a 80% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns when previously it was 70. All right, pretty light on that one. Is this enough to make her meta? I don't think so. These are obviously very nice QOL buffs, but I don't think this is going to be enough to make her very usable. Right now, you have units like New Moon Luna and Noctwall, where if you want sealing, they're just a lot better. Can she work as a carry potentially? With the increased scaling damage here, possibly. I will definitely try it out, guys. Sorry, I don't mean to be super negative on this balance patch, but a lot of the changes are pretty safe, is all I'm kind of thinking here. Let me see this. Let's see. Archdemon Shadow will be adjusted to decrease limitations. First, the chance to seal when using Touch of Chasm is 100%. Additionally, Burst will now be triggered 100% when the target is sealed. So it is only 100% when the target is sealed, guys, which is definitely good. I would even say potentially better. However, we're going to need to make sure that unfortunately, if the opponent has immunity up, or if we get 15%ed and we can't soul burn, we no longer have that 40% chance, which I really do not like. I like the chance to still burst. I wish it was like 50 when you don't have it, and then change it to 100 when you do have the seal. But regardless, okay, I guess that's where we're going with it. The decrease hit chance has been removed. Instead, we're going to get more damage. I think this is also kind of like it's a give and take, obviously, but the blind was really strong for building up those stacks with Archdemon so she can survive. You get blinds on the low ER extra units, the DPS. And a lot of times that's enough to help her survive, or your team survive, until she gets that big Dissolution S3 finisher. Furthermore, the decreased chance. Yeah, I guess we get 10% chance more on D-Break, but I don't know if that's really what she needed. I'm not super happy with that overall. I like Archdemon buff. She's one of my favorite units. But in terms of actually being like powerful, the meta right now is so fast-paced and so strong. I shouldn't say fast-paced because Tank Down's pretty strong right now. But you guys get what I'm saying. Like the units' power levels are so over the top at the moment. I don't think this is enough. But I'll try her out, guys. And even if it's not crazy, not every unit has to be meta. So I guess it's fine. But this is a very safe patch, in my opinion. All right, Eligos. I don't really know too much what he does besides being a very fast, aggressive opener with like multi-ability. He does some cool stuff with his suitcase. He's like a spy, but let's see here. Damage dealt. Okay, that's always nice. And when the caster granted Gab, greater attack buff, we trigger a dual attack. So I'm assuming one of our other buffs here, the Cleaner, now grants greater attack buff. Very nice. That's huge. We also get just straight up crit, increased hit chance and crit damage. Was that moved from somewhere else? I guess the perception, right? But hit chance 50% damage. Hit chance and 50% damage, excuse me. Activates time bomb against the enemy with the lowest health. Previously his highest attack. And now we have Gab, which should just be straight up way more damage. We still keep the speed scaling effect as well. But they did kind of remove this up to maximum 200%. I'm curious what that scaling is on. But damage dealt increase overall on both of these plus Gab just means I think this Eligos is going to be hitting like crazy. Cloaking Trigger at the end, since we have hit chance already, inflicts resources. So, excuse me, inflicts resource reduction. Okay, this is actually very interesting. Resource reduction is super powerful. 60% is quite a bit. Before attacking the enemy with a pistol, and then increase combat readiness of the caster by 50%. Damage will increase here too. So damage across all. He has damage increased across the entire board. He has resource reduction. Gab, straight up. They just give him now hit chance and crit damage. I think Eligos is the winner of this patch so far, which is sad for me to say because I don't really play him. It's not my style. I wish Archdemon or one of the other ML5s got a bigger buff. But hey, like Pirate Captain Flan, so far to me, Eligos just seems like he has the most impactful buff thus far. His EEs are going to be changed as well. Stealth gets 2 turns. And then time bomb damage. Okay. Chloe. Let's see what they're doing with blue Chloe. I only remember one person way back when in the day, guys, using blue Chloe in RTA. She's nice for PvE and stuff because of how magic nail works. I guess they call it magic bolt. Oh, no, they do say nail here. Okay. But let's see. After increasing attack of the caster for... Let's read the awakening. After increasing attack of the caster for 3 turns, attacks the enemies. So I guess she gets self-attack up, which she didn't have previously. And then magic nail. When attacked, inflicts additional damage proportional to the attacker's attack. When attacked, suffers damage equivalent to 2% of max health and has a 25% chance. Okay, interesting. Is this a PvE buff? I don't really see this being used in PvP necessarily. Maybe against some high attack scaling units, but I think this is a PvE. Big PvE buff, right? Which is where she was already used mostly. Hyper Strike is now, when the enemy is afflicted with magic nail, ignores ER. Okay, yeah, I like this for PvE. Ignoring ER and then attack scaling damage here instead of like stun is much better. The 2% max health, I'm not sure if that's going to outscale that, but hopefully it will. Because 2% max health on PvE bosses is huge, like things like Wyvern and things like that. But, okay, yeah, interesting Chloe buff. And then they're going to change some EEs as well. Let's see, Heavy Strike, Hyper Strike damage, Combat Readiness, and then 85% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns when using Hyper Strike. Yeah. So I think she's going to be very nice for things like Wyvern, I'm assuming. PvE. Maybe future PvE content as well. Advent, things like that. Yufine, all right. Dragon's Roar. Yufine has been changed so many times, guys. I'm honestly sick of seeing her on these balance patches. I don't know why they keep buffing this unit. I like Yufine, but geez, man. Give some other units a chance. All right. Dragon's Roar. Let's see. Before, 70% chance to decrease defense. So she has a 70% chance to decrease defense now for 2 turns. I'm telling you guys, since the dawn of time, since this game has come out, Yufine, I think, has undergone, excuse me, so many changes. I don't even remember what it was previously. But now she's going to have a D-break instead of attack and defense. Okay, and we can soul burn that to ignore ER. Is this another PvE buff? They're kind of trying to iron her out into PvE unit. Dragon Charge Awakening will now so we have self-attack up for 2 turns. Attacks me with a massive blade. When the enemy is defeated, grants an extra turn. When the target has a debuff, damage dealt increase. So not necessarily PvE. This typically means a PvP buff. Extra turn. When the target has a debuff, damage dealt increases. Okay. When the skill is available according to cooldown count after an ally except for the caster uses the skill, if the enemy has a debuff, increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%. Interesting. Okay. And then she's going to get crit chance as well, which is nice. I don't really know what to think about this. She's going to be more usable. Maybe we can use her again like in People Will Cook with like aggressive setups. I've seen that in the past. I just don't really know. Like they keep changing her kit. And I think there's just other units that could really use some love instead of giving the same unit like reworks. And that's not even a rework, but they keep adjusting things over and over. You know what? It is a rework because they changed entirely what her buffs are, all her kit. But if you're a Yufine fan, hopefully this makes her very good. I think the crit chance and all the other stuff sounds great. Sinful Angelica. All right. Let's see what we got here. So we have a D break instead of attack break. Okay. I think that is a very big buff, right? Because a D break into pulling a unit is oftentimes just game over for whatever you're hitting. We can soul burn that to make it 100% chance. Yeah, same thing here. Okay. So yeah, that's a straight buff. Very, very nice. Soul Harvest means enemies cannot revive. Just period. Okay, interesting. So instead of it only being when she's immortal, now enemies just cannot revive. And it is enemies only. And then Dark Salvation. Whips of Vortex. Dispelling 2 buffs from all allies. And before it was dispel 1 buff. Okay. All right. So luckily they didn't change anything to how she works. These are just very nice straight up buffs. Not too much. But dispel 2 buffs. Or sorry. Dispel 2 debuffs. Enemies cannot revive always. Not just when she's immortal. And then the D break instead of attack break I think is also huge. So, all right, this is Sinful Angelica stuff. Yeah, more user-friendly. Very nice. Just a good unit already in Guild Wars. Things like that. Going to be even better. I'm okay with that. All right, Sigurd Scythe, what do we got here? Remember how in the opening, guys, I said it favors more attack? I think that's where they're going with it. You have things like Golden Rose for units that maybe are like HP scalers or that don't necessarily care about attack. And now we have Sigurd's Scythe is just going to increase attack even more so. So it will be 5% less at the top end. However, 20% at max will also work when we're above 50%, right? So I think this is very nice. We lose 5% on the top end, but we always have increased attack by 20%, which is huge. So definitely a net positive in my opinion. Is it though? I guess like when you're under 50, that extra 5% is more heal absorb, but I think it's still worth it. Okay. An offer you can't refuse. Which one is this, guys? When attacking with a single attack, penetrates the target's defense by 10 to 20%. After attacking with a single attack, when the target receives damage equivalent to 50% or more max health, has a 50 to 100% chance to increase the combat readiness of all allies by 15%. And previously, it's when an enemy was defeated. Okay, so they're just making it a lot more usable. Can only be affected once per turn. Yeah, so instead of having to kill the enemy whenever they're 50% of max health, so a huge threshold decrease in terms of proccing this. All right. Let's see what people are saying, guys. The last patch was a one-time thing. Unfortunately, oh God, I had that meeting on stream with them, and they were saying that the balance patches in the future will also be huge. This seems very, very light. P-Flan is still locked behind a 30 artifact. Thank you for canceling. I know. I'm a little disappointed, too. Yeah, they didn't change much. I think for Archdemon as well. It's not just Pirate Flan. Archdemon changes were also not super... Okay, these guys are getting very upset. Well, unfortunately, guys, yeah, hopefully maybe this is just one to tide us over, but I do see a kind of trend here where we're kind of just, unfortunately, sort of coasting. And, yeah, this is very light. Doesn't really impact too much. Sorry to be... usually, guys, I try to stay a little more positive, but, yeah, not super happy with this balance patch overall. Let me know all your thoughts. Positive or negative, guys. Just try to keep them constructive without being toxic. And, yeah, I'm going to try to ask Smilegate, hey, what happened to that? Not really a promise, but what happened to saying that the next balance patch would also be huge like the first one. All right, guys. I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.